Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host, where today we are talking UFC 317, headlined by Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today, and this is a massive, massive card here. I love this card from an entertainment, but most of all, a betting perspective. And I already have a 5% max bet play loaded for this weekend. Max bets are hitting around 70%. But this particular angle is hitting at 83%. I love this spot here. Going to be adding to it. We already have 3 plays locked in for clients. So if you want to become a client, link down in the description. We'll be adding to that. And I think I'm going to have a loaded slate here of bets for this card here, and looking forward to cashing those tickets. But let's dive into the main event of the evening between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. Now, we got this line here sitting at Topuria minus 500. The comeback here on Charles Oliveira is plus 380. Now, this is pretty crazy line, and the whole situation here that's been going on has been like very intriguing here. You've got Ilia Topuria, who has moved up in weight. You've got Islam Makhachev, who has moved up in weight, and now that is providing this vacant lightweight title bout between Topuria and Charles Oliveira. Now you look at, Oliveira, and you already know what you're getting from this guy, right? This guy is a future Hall of Famer. He is just elite level, on the ground, most submissions in the history of the UFC. I mean, the guy basically feel like he's grown up in the UFC and has continued to just get better and better and better. And the one thing here, and I say this a lot here in the show, is, styles make fights, but so does timing. So does the timing of these fights. And that's kind of where I look at this fight here, where you've got, Oliveira, who, now 35 years old, and there's a 7-year age gap between these two guys. And that's a big issue. That's definitely a concern here. But it's also the fact that now you've got Topuria, who is really hitting his prime. He is really hitting his stride. We're really seeing this guy just continue to just grow into a mega superstar, and also just inside the cage and outside of the cage as well. But one of the biggest things here when I was going back and watching tape was the fact that, really the last fight for Charles Oliveira, I thought was really unimpressive. And we talk about that 35-year-old barrier of, once you're on the wrong side of 35, things can start to tilt down. Things can definitely, deteriorate a little bit quicker. And, I was at that fight. I was in attendance for Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. And that was one here where, listen, I think at this particular point, a guy like Oliveira needs to put a fucking stamp and finish a guy like Michael Chandler. Not saying Chandler is some easy guy to finish by any means, but Chandler's more of like a CrossFit trainer than he is an MMA fighter. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like this guy is just, he wants excitement. He wants big moments. He wants memorable moments, but he's not really trying to like win fights, really. He doesn't fight to a really game plan. And even in that fight there, there was some dicey moments for Charles Oliveira. And if you kind of look at, statistics, the significant strikes landed was 88-84 in favor of Oliveira, which is pretty crazy when you look at the fact that he needed the takedowns. Oliveira needed takedowns. He had 5 takedowns with over 15 minutes of control time, and that's what got him the victory. It wasn't his striking. It wasn't, the submission game. It was really just keeping Chandler and controlling him, and being able to kind of positionally win bank rounds. And even in that 5th round, it got very dicey again. That chin, he got lit up and he got dropped. There was moments where it almost looked like, even though Chandler had like 15 illegal strikes to the back of the head of Chandler, but I thought it was just not a great performance from Oliveira. And that's one of the biggest things here breaking down this fight, is the biggest liability here for Charles Oliveira is really going to be his chin and the style at which he fights. And what I mean by that is the fact that, you've got Oliveira here, who, how many times have we seen this guy dropped, rocked, wobbled, clipped? A lot of times. And I feel like in most fights, and even fights where he wins, he's able to kind of battle through some of that, but he still gets hit hard. And that is where I think there's a problem, where that chin, I think, is very suspect here, especially now we're starting to talk about 35 years old. It's not going to improve. It's not going to get better by any means. And not only that, but he's a shoot to box guy. And we all know how these guys fight. These guys are going to come forward. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to throw a lot of strikes. They're going to get in your face. And that, I think is a massive problem here for Oliveira, because I don't see him backing up. I don't see him, just kind of, giving space and letting Topuria walk him down. And even Oliveira has said in a recent interview, I'm not backing up. I'm gonna bring it to him. And that is a problem here, because both these guys are going to come forward. They're going to throw hard. And I think also you look at it is not only is the chin of Oliveira, a little suspect, but also the fact his striking defense is not very good. He does have explosive moments where he's doing these jumping knees and these high energy movements. And yes, sure. I mean, listen, some of these things could land and change the entire fight. But with that being said, he kind of is just wild in the pocket, and with a guy who is so precise with their striking when you're talking about Topuria. And I just think this is a bad matchup where he's going to be able to come forward. I think Topuria is, absurdly well-rounded. We don't really see his grappling much because he's knocking everybody out. And I think he sees that, hey, I can defend takedowns. If this fight hits the ground, I am very comfortable down there, but let me march these guys down because I don't care if I'm taken down. And that is a powerful thing to have, backed by far better striking, far better boxing. And that's what he does. He's got great footwork. He mixes it up very well. I love the way he hits the body and then works the head. That is also the way that, you've seen, JDM, Jack Della Maddalena, that's the way these guys are elite level boxers in MMA. And that's what he does. He works the body, gets your hands low, and throws the big hooks. That's where I see this going here. I don't think that you need Topuria to land, some big combination. I think if he clips it at one time, at any point, the fight could be over. And that's where I see this going here. So getting off the big minus 500 number here, I do like Ilia Topuria to win by knockout. Now that's sitting anywhere around minus 145, minus 150. Are seeing that number go up a little bit, but I think there is a lot of value in that. You've got 5 rounds, and I think these guys are going to trade. I don't think Topuria is going to want to, go to the ground and grapple and look to take Oliveira down. Sure, Oliveira may look to do that to him, but I don't think he's going to find much success. This fight should play out on the feet, and I think Topuria can win in probably spectacular fashion by knockout. So I'm taking Ilia Topuria to win by knockout, minus 150. Next one here we're going to talk about is the other title fight of the night. We got Alejandro Pantoja. He is minus 275 on the comeback. We've got Kai Kara France plus 210. Now, there is no doubt that Pantoja has been on an absolute run, man. This guy is on a tear, 7 straight victories. This will be his 4th title fight. And the guys look great. We know what we're getting from this guy. He has found a lot of success crashing the pocket, diving forward, swinging big shots, and just being relentless, having this wrestling pressure and just smothering guys' offense. And he's been tough enough to kind of battle through some big moments and then just keep bringing it. And he has really proved himself to be a really solid champion over this run overall. Now, the one thing here where I'm looking at is there are a couple issues here on the Pantoja side that I do see, and especially at this price tag. You're talking about a 3-1 favorite at this point. I think there are some possible issues here that Kai Kara France can exploit. Now, the first thing being here is now we've got another 35-year-old, but we've got a 35-year-old in the flyweight division, and that is even tougher. When you're talking about ages, and we always talk about that kind of stuff, the flyweight division, cramming your body down to that weight class, cutting down is always difficult. And there's pretty much why a lot of guys do move up at a certain point when they do hit that point of their career. And you're even seeing with Islam, Islam had for years had said, I'm done with this division. It's hard as hell for me to cut down to this. I'm moving up. And that is really, why he moved up. And I think, Pantoja at this point here, not saying that he struggles to cut weight or any of these things, but there's a point that's taxing on you. There is just absolutely a point that's taxing on you. Now you add in the fact that he has had some cardio, suspect moments there. Now, I'm not saying that he's got bad cardio because we've seen this guy battle through it, but that's what he needs to do. The big thing here is he needs to battle through some of this stuff. Sometimes, you see him and it does look like, wow, man, things are ticking down when you're talking about, his gas tank there. And then all of a sudden he's able to get takedown. And that is where that actual moment is really what makes me, want to take Kara France in this spot, because I think that, when you're looking at Pantoja, he needs takedowns. He absolutely has to get these down. There's no doubt about it. Once he gets you down there, the guys, can get to your back quick, very slick on the ground. There's a lot of great things that he can do down there. Look for control time, bank some rounds. I mean, there are those things that are possible. But the fact that, if Kai Kara France starts landing some big shots there, and or he's getting tired a little bit and he needs to get a takedown, I think he struggles getting those takedowns. And that is where I think this line looks very wide if it plays more out on the feet. And that's where you look at Kai Kara-France. He has shown to have fantastic, defensive wrestling, good takedown defense. And not only that, but he does have an 88% takedown defense rate, very high. And I think some of that can hold up here. And you've seen Pantoja. There are moments where, he gets a takedown, but the guy's able to kind of, get out a little bit and get back to their feet unless he gets to the back and backpacks you. And that's really been Pantoja's been really phenomenal getting to those positions. But, his control is not that great. And that's where I think Kai Kara-France, not only does he have great takedown defense and the ability to wrestle defensively, but also the fact he's got good scrambles. You've seen it multiple times where he's been able to get back to his feet, even when taken down. He does not stop moving. He doesn't, accept the bottom position. He decides to continually push, continually work. And that's kind of where, I do think he can find success. Even other wrestlers and other guys that he has faced that are very tough, he's been able to really make them work for takedowns. Say what you will about, Askar Askarov, but Askar Askarov is a solid wrestler, and he was 2 for 14 on takedowns. Amir Albazi was 1 for 9 on takedowns. And even Brandon Moreno was 0 for 3. So, you look at that situation, it can possibly be a little bit more tougher, I think, for Pantoja to get those takedowns. He's going to shoot. He's going to shoot. But is he going to have that consistent ability to keep him down there? And I think Kara-France is going to make that very, very difficult, because if this fight does play out on the feet, I highly favor, Kai Kara-France's striking. I think he's got fantastic volume. He's got big time power, good combinations. He's pushed out good volume, throughout his career. He's always pushing out that good volume. And, I think that his accuracy on his shots are far cleaner than anything that Pantoja does do here. And this is another spot where I just think this line is wide. I really have to go with Kara-France here. I think especially at this plus 210 number, I think is very live. And again, there's got to be a point where Pantoja really does start to decline here. And I think this is a very tough stylistic matchup. So I'm going Kai Kara-France to get the job done, plus 210 and new. Next fight we're going to go is going to be Gregory Rodriguez. He is minus 220. On the comeback here, we've got Jack Hermanson. He is plus 180. Now, we look at this fight here, and you got Gregory Rodriguez, who is, a powerhouse of a man. He's a big dude. He has a lot of strength overall. We know he's got some power in his hands. He's going to really look for that wrestling, look if he can get you down. He doesn't always do it, but he looks to get you down. And then, he's got high level when you're talking about his grappling, his BJJ. He has a lot of that. He's going to be 4 years younger also. So he's going to have some advantages when you are looking at that. But, this is another spot that, there are some problems here that I think that Jack Hermanson can offer up here. And, I'm always hunting for that plus money. And this is another spot here where I think the dog is live. You look at Jack Hermanson, and if this fight does hit the mat, and if Gregory Rodriguez is going to push that kind of pace, there is a possibility he can maybe keep the top control and do those kinds of things. But Jack is no slouch on the ground. The guy has high level jiu-jitsu. Even off of his back, he's very slick. He's got good transitions. He's always opportunistic with his submission game. And I think those things are going to possibly cause some problems. Now, the other part of this is the fact that I do think there's a possibility that this fight could possibly play out as it did with Hermanson versus Joe Pyfer. I do think that it obviously that was, a little bit different of a fight, whatever. But when you're looking at this fight here, I think that Jack Hermanson has the type of ability where, he can take the damage. He's a guy that, early on you saw in the Pyfer fight where he was landing just heavy shots. But he took it. And that's something to me at a 37-year-old fighter, or I think at the time he was 36. That's a good sign, that he's not wilting away. He didn't just crumble. He didn't just, he's still a gamer. He still pushed through all that, even though that, and Jack and Joe Pyfer hits hard, has big time power, and still he pushed through a lot of that. And that just is I think a telling sign of where he is, that he's not packing it in. He still has a dog in him, and he's still looking to push forward. So he has proved that durability, that he can take those shots. And then also the fact that we have seen Rodriguez, who has been slowing down. Yes, this isn't a 5-rounder like he did against Cannonier, but it's another position where, Rodriguez is probably going to throw heavy early. He's going to look for that finish. Sure, it is live, but Hermanson, the durability, I think that, he can withstand some of those shots and kind of get some legs to this fight and kind of get it into that second and into that third round. And, you look at Hermanson, I think one of the trickiest things that he does have, obviously, besides for his grappling, which is elite, he's got high level jiu-jitsu, but is his footwork. And I think that is really what threw, Joe Pyfer off the most, was he couldn't just stand and plant his feet and throw big bombs. He was struggling with it. Hermanson does not stop moving. He's very unorthodox, very tricky, and just wasn't able to get the reads. It's tough to get the reads on him. It's tough to kind of see where this guy's going to go because he's bop, bop, bop. He moves out, he, throws a leg kick, throws a couple other shots, might shoot on you, then backs up. It's just a lot of movement. And you look at, Rodriguez is the guy who is very slow. Footwork is very slow, plotty type of style. And yes, he can explode forward when, can level change and kind of bully his way down and get the takedown. But that, I think, is just really where you can see Jack find success, where he's going to be having tough finding the timing, getting a rhythm, getting himself into the position of landing the big shot or looking for those takedowns. And also, you've got to add in that I love Jack throwing those leg kicks. I think those will be available to him throughout this fight here, where, again, got Rodriguez, who is slow, plotty. The footwork will be there for Hermanson. He's going to be able to chop away at the leg. And I think that's only going to make things much more worse for Rodriguez as this fight continues. His cardio is not that good. His footwork isn't the greatest. And yes, he can, there is no doubt that him landing a bomb early on Hermanson is live. But again, at this price of plus 180, I think that there is value on that spot here. And I think that Hermanson is by far the better minute winner between these two guys. So even if this does get some legs, I do think he can find success. So this is a spot here where I'm also going to be playing it the point spread here. Now, I'm getting more and more. I'm betting these, and I have found a lot of success with them. But one of the spots here is that, and for those who are not, if you're not very aware of what it is, but basically it's a 3-round fight. It's a plus 3.5. Basically means that if all 3 judges score 1 round for your fighter, you win. 29-28 across the board, you lose. You would actually win by a half a point. So I think that this is a spot where I think Hermanson can probably win 1 round. I think he can at least do that. I think he's not going to be put away. He's a very tough, durable guy. And I think that he will find, even if it's that 3rd round, and he can bank that, he probably gets at least 1 round, and you cash that ticket. So I do like Hermanson plus 3.5 at plus 100. I think is a pretty strong number. They're still getting even money, and I think even the money line I think is a nice spot there. But I'm definitely going Jack Hermanson plus 3.5 to get the job done. And the last one here we're going to talk about is going to be Terrence McKinney minus 192. On the comeback here, we've got Vyacheslav Borchev plus 148. Now, this is probably going to be a complete car crash, this fight. I fully expect that to just be that. And you look at McKinney, he is really a kill or be killed type of fighter here. He's got 6 UFC wins. Out of those 6 UFC wins, all of them done in the first round. He gets the finish in the first round. Out of his 16 total pro wins, 15 ended in the first round. And out of his 7 losses, all of them are by stoppage. So this is a guy that will go out there, guns blazing, knock me out or I'm knocking you out, and that's how it's going to go. And, there were some hype behind him, but, I feel like we aren't seeing the greatest of him really overall. And he's really a, round 1 or bust kind of guy here. And when you look at it, early, he's explosive. He's got, he's very athletic, good movement, some power in his hands. He does have those things, but this is another spot here where the cardio is just not there. It's clearly not there. And, that's why it's probably why he always goes for that early finish. He's swinging because he knows, hey, listen, this goes in the second round. My chances of winning dramatically go down. And I think that that's where you're going to see the footwork start to go down. You're going to see the explosiveness start to go down. And that's really where I think Borchev has an ability to probably find some success. And you look at it also is that, probably the higher win condition here for McKinney is going to be a knockout. But you look at Borchev, and he has never been knocked out in his professional career. And the only finish that he has taken was by Chase Hooper by submission. So he has not been knocked out. He has been able to take some massive damage and still battle through some of it, which I think really you need against McKinney. That's like a really a big qualification here. If you're looking to take someone against McKinney, is are they durable? Do they have the ability to kind of push through some adversity? And I think that's what's going to be happening here, where McKinney on the feet, sure, the guy has some ability, some striking, but I think that you've got Borchev, who I think is the better striker, has clean combinations overall, mixes it up very well. And I think even McKinney, there's spots where he can be very sloppy. He throws everything with 100% power. He overthrows a lot of his shots, leaving himself very much open. And I think that's where you can see that Borchev can start to land some big shots. And the other part here, I think, is the fact that, sure, there is absolutely McKinney looking for takedowns is there. You've got Borchev, who's been taken down like 30 times in the last like 7 or 8 fights. So yes, that is a spot. But I also think that you've seen Borchev get up. You've seen him get up. You've seen guys who have taken him down need to keep working, need to continue to shoot for takedowns. And I don't think McKinney has the gas tank or even the ability to really look and just consistently look for these takedowns. So we even go back over some of the guys that took him down. I mean, you've got Mark DeCasey took him down 11 times. Mike Davis took him down 9 times. You even have Nassim Sadikov took him down 4 times. So yeah, it's a lot of times he was taken down, but he had to get up to be taken back down again. And I don't think that McKinney is this like elite level, grappler that's going to take him down and just control him. I think that Borchev can get his get up game going, create the space, and if it gets into that second round, I think Borchev's win probability really starts to go up here. So I am taking Vyacheslav Borchev, another plus money winner this weekend here at plus 148 to get the job done. So there you have it from right place for UFC 317. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. I have the 5% max bet play up right now for clients, and I have 3 plays in total. We'll be adding to that as we get closer to fight night. And that's the show. That's the show. We are cashing. We are fucking cashing this weekend. We are cashing this 5%. We have been dominating on pay-per-views. I expect that to happen on Saturday night. So let's get it done and let's cash.